Today we are making Chile rellenos. These are Mexican stuffed peppers. Here are the ingredients that we're using today. 6 large poblano peppers, 6 Roma tomatoes, 1 jalapeno, 3 cloves of garlic, and half of a small onion, Himalayan pink salt, eggs, all-purpose flour, the beautiful Israeli olive oil that I got from my Israel cart order, fresh cilantro, and block Monterey cheese. Let's get started. The first step is to wash the poblano peppers and put them on a baking sheet with aluminum foil. The recipe does call for 6. I ended up purchasing 5, and one was a little sad looking, so we are cooking 4 today. We're going to broil the peppers until the skin is black and blistered. My oven has the broiler in the lowermost drawer. So we'll get that set on a high broil. And it just depends on how hot your oven is, or if you're broiling on a stovetop or a grill. For me, it took about 10 minutes to get that nice char. And then I flip the peppers over and we'll get the other side grilled up. You can see in the back just how hot it is in there. And then just another 5 to 10 minutes. Keep an eye on them because you don't want them to dry out, but you do want the skin to get nice and charred. That looks beautiful. The skin is nice and blistered, and that just helps to loosen the skin from the pepper. We'll then cover the hot peppers with foil and just let them steam for about 5 minutes. Now we'll get started on the salsa roja. You'll dice the tomatoes, get half an onion, 3 cloves of garlic, 1 jalapeno with the seeds removed, 5 sprigs of cilantro, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and then you'll blend it until it's completely smooth. Now that the salsa is ready, we'll go back to the peppers, and they've been steaming for about 5 to 10 minutes at this point until they're cool so you don't burn your fingers. And at this point, the skin should just easily slide right off. So you'll go ahead and peel all of the peppers. And that's all the skin that we've removed, and you can just toss that. The peppers look beautiful, nice and smooth. It's just a lot easier to eat them without that skin. The skin it doesn't have a very nice mouthfeel. So this is the beautiful olive oil that I got from Israel that I put in a nice dispenser bottle. It's easy to pour from. So you'll drizzle about a tablespoon of olive oil into the pan and heat that on medium. And you do want to remove that center part of the blender if you have this kind of blender, otherwise when you tip it over, it just falls out. Not all blenders are that way, but mine is, and I learned that I need to make sure to remove that part so I don't make a mess. And then we'll go ahead and pour the salsa into the pan, and then once it's come to a boil, you'll reduce the heat. And the recipe says to simmer for 8 minutes, but I ended up doubling that time. Again, a lot just depends on the temperature that you use and how hot your stove is and what your personal preference is. Now, I had jasmine rice on hand, so that's what I used. But if I did have to duplicate this recipe again, I would definitely use a different rice. I love jasmine rice. It's so flavorful and it tastes amazing. But for this particular recipe, honestly, the flavors didn't end up really matching. So the next time I make this, I'm going to use Mexican rice for sure. So now the salsa mix has reduced and the flavors are nice and concentrated. The flavors really come out when you cook it a little bit. And you can put extra salsa away for later. Now we'll go ahead and stuff those peppers. I'm using Monterey Jack cheese, and you want it in a block so that you can cut sticks. You don't want shredded cheese because that would get too messy. You'll slice the top of the pepper, gently stuff it with cheese. And since I'm only using 4 peppers, I did reduce the number of eggs from 3 to 2. So you'll go ahead and separate out the whites and the yolks. And then you'll beat the egg whites until stiff peaks form. It did use a little bit of elbow grease to get these mixed up by hand. If you have a nice blender that can make things go faster, or like a electric beater, but we got the job done and that's okay. You'll then add the yolks and mix them in. Making a nice fluffy batter like this makes the peppers nice and crispy when we're going to cook them later. And here we're preparing the flour mix. So you'll mix the flour, 1/2 cup flour with 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we'll get the oil heating up in the pan over here. You'll want a nice generous amount of oil. If you have a deep fryer, that's perfect for this recipe. If you don't have one, you want to use enough oil that you can really get the peppers nicely toasted. And you'll heat that on medium-high. And you can always strain the extra oil through a paper towel and reuse it for a different recipe. So now we'll coat the peppers. So you'll first dip it into the flour mix. And what makes your life so much easier is if you have toothpicks, and you can actually use the toothpicks to close the seam of the pepper to hold the cheese in. But I didn't have any on hand, so I just went for it, and it actually worked out pretty well. It's very messy. You'll then dip the pepper into that fluffy egg batter. And then we'll go ahead and very gently place the pepper into the hot oil in the pan. And I was actually expecting all of the cheese to just melt out and make a giant mess, but it actually ended up working out really well. Everything held together really nicely. You'll fry the peppers 1 or 2 at a time, 3 to 5 minutes on each side. Look at that beautiful color. Those peppers just look amazing. And here you'll plate up some hot rice, some salsa roja, and you'll put a nice pepper on top. Look at that beautiful, beautiful plate. And now it's time for a taste test. You can see the cheese melted beautifully. You've got some salsa and some rice. And honestly, the rice didn't quite match. The salsa was way too spicy for me, but overall, this was an amazing dish. Thank you for watching, and bete van.